Kumlan and Ablat Gemara, Mishnah. So we are talking about how one has to distance themselves from their neighbor. You have to take into consideration that you're not causing them any harm in any way. And we had different rules, different strictures, depending what the item is, depending if it's your fault. And we had also Machlekes Rabbi Yossi the Chachamim, if it's directly from you or not, and who's the one who has to take all the precautions, the one who is ultimately the mazik or the nizik, or the one who is the victim has to take all the precautions. So the Mishnah continues. We also learn, by the way, the laws of pollution, and this is really what it's all about pollution, that we have to consider other people as well. We shouldn't cause smoke, stench, all kinds of things that spoil the air around us. As it says in the Medrash in Kehelis, that when it says by Adam that he gave him the Gan Eden of the Shamra, so the Medrash says actually this world. He said, I gave you this world to take care of this world and mind this world and make sure that you give it back to me the same way I gave it to you. So therefore we have all these laws here are based on that. So the Mishnah says, Marchikin as an avelus as a chorus, you distance carcasses because they have a terrible stench, and the esakvaris, a cemetery, the es habursiki, and not only a cemetery but also a bursiki, which is a tannery, because also has a terrible smell. Minair chamishimama, from a city 50 amma. Rashi says that a beis hakvaris is also for the same reason, because of reach ra. It has a bad odor. The Lavush says, if I remember correctly, the Lavush says that the reason is because people, if they're nearby the cemetery, every time they walk by a cemetery, they see a name of a close member of their family, they'll become depressed. And we don't want to, spread depression around. The Shach in Shulchan Aruch doesn't agree with the Lavush, and he quotes Rashi. Others say to avoid the kohanim from becoming tamei, we shouldn't have a cemetery close to the city. And in fact, if the cemetery is closer to the city than 50 amas, we can actually clear out the cemetery and move it somewhere else. Okay, then the Mishnah continues. Ein oisim bursiki el mizachir. Another thing, we shouldn't make this tannery only on the east side of the city. Why on the east side of the city? So Rashi says because the easterly wind is very calm, and therefore there's not strong winds, not fierce winds, and therefore the smell is very limited. Taisa says the reason is because the westerly wind is strong, and the westerly wind will push the smell away. Then the Mishnah continues. Rabbi Kiva says, "L'chol ruach hu oisa." You can have this bursiki in any side you want, chutz mimarava, except on the western side. But then he says, "Marchi kamishimama," you distance 50 amos. Now it's not clear, and the Gemara will explain whether these words you separate 50 amos is he referring to bursiki or on all sides, but the western side you shouldn't do it at all. I don't care what distance. Or the 50 amos is talking about the western side, but the other side, even closer than that, is all right. Then we really had the next part of the Mishnah previously. You have to distance the flax, like you're soaking in water. You have to soak the water, the flax, a few days in water to weaken the fibers so that you can prepare the linen, turn into linen, or the creation or the leeks from the onions, because if the leek grows too close to the onion, then the leek takes away some of the sharpness from the onion. But the only thing is the Mishnah doesn't say how far. So it says marchikin. So there are actually quite a few opinions. Some say it's three. Some Rishonim say it's 3 tvachim. Some Rishonim say it's 4 tvachim. Some Rishonim say it's 50 amos, like the last thing we just learned in the Mishnah. It has to be 50 amos. And the previous Mishnah as well talks about the threshing floor. It says 50 amos. So everything here is 50 amos as well. There's a chardul min at the bottom. We had the whole discussion before about how to understand the argument between Rabbi Yossi that come in the mustard and the bees. The problem with the mustard and the bees are that the bees come and they eat the mustard. It's very sharp, and as a result of that, they go back and they consume their own honey to temper that sharpness, and therefore there's a loss for the owner of the bees of the honey. So the Chachamim therefore say that you have to distance the chardal from the bees, maybe 50 amos, according to those opinions. Rabbi Yossi is matzah b'chard. Rabbi Yossi says the mustard you can leave there, And why should mustard be different? So we brought a brisa before that Rabbi Yossi's argument is that just like my mustard is harming your bees are harming my mustard because they eat the seeds. So therefore, why should I move? You move. But the Gemara conclusion there is Rabbi Yossi holds that it's the nizik that actually has to distance themselves. So in fact, Rabbi Yossi not only argues in the case of the mustard, he argues in all these cases. It's the nizik that has to move himself, but he's addressing the Chachamim. You hold as the mazik that has to distance. Okay, I'll grant you that. I understand the case of the leek and all that and the flax. But when it comes to the mustard, at least be made to me that mustard is different because they're both mazik each other. Why should the mustard be penalized, the owner of the mustard plants, any more than the owner of the bees? And the Chacham answer back because the owner of the bees is as not really damaging the mustard because the seeds he can't get to and the leaves on top they'll grow pretty quickly. Says the Gemara. Yibayla question is when he says 50 amas, what's he saying? Is he saying l'chol ruach or oisa? All the other side, you can bring it as close as possible. You don't have to distance 50 amas. Except the western side, the marchik nun by the Burski, you have to distance 50 amas. So when he says 50 amas, referring to the western side, but oisa, then you can have it to build that Burski. That tannery, or perhaps no, all three sides you distance 50 amas. Except the western side, you don't do it at all. Kashma coming here. The time you learn the Brisa keep it says you can the Brisa fills in and it says that you can do in every direction. In all directions you need 50 amma. The exception is the western side. The Eino Oisa Kol Ika. You don't do it at all. The Pnei Shehi Tadira. You don't do the western side at all because it is Tadira, common. We'll see in a minute what that means. What do you mean that it's Tadira? Ilema Tadira Beruchas. Now on the western side, the wind is constantly blowing more than any other wind. That's the problem on the western side. But Omar Rab Chanan Bar Abba said, name of Rab, Daled Ruchais Menashve B'choyem. All winds blow every single day. It's not the western wind that goes with all of them, it's the northern wind that goes with all of them. And why the northern wind? Because it's quite temperate and it's not very strong and it's calming in the northern hemisphere. And it cools down a bit when it gets hot. So the northern wind is a good one, and it travels with each other. It goes together with all the other winds. So it's not the western wind that's Tadir Baruchas, it's the northern wind. Shilmole came, and if you wouldn't have the northern wind blowing constantly, the world couldn't exist. I feel for one moment. And but the southern wind is the worst of them all. And Vilmole Benetz, had it not been for this angel called Benetz, this Malawonet Shemamida, that holds it back somewhat, that suddenly wind will destroy the world. So then it says the posik, do you understand that your other nates, that this malach nates uses its limbs, yifresh knaf of the temon, it spreads out yifresh knaf of temon, it spreads out its wings to the south, and that holds back. So what do you mean Tadiris? What do you mean the western wind? The western wind is Tadir. No, it isn't. It's the northerly wind that's constant, not the westerly wind. So we answer Tadira B'Shchina, that the western side, that's where the Shechina is located. And because that's where the Shechina is located, therefore we don't want a bursiki on the western side. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Shubalevi said, the boyu, let's go. The nachzik toiv saying the opinion that says that the Shechina was found on the Ma'ariv side is because in the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash was on the western side of the thing, and then you walk in the Beis Hamikdash, you have the Kodesh, the Heichel, the Kodesh Kedoshim is continuing traveling west. So the Kodesh Kedoshim was west, and that's where the Shechina was. So the Shechina b'Ma'ariv. So the Amr Shumalev, like you said, I'm saying, let's go and give thanks to our ancestors. They told us exactly which way we should daven and where the Shechina is found. Why? Because it says a pasuk, that the sun, the moon, and all the stars is they rise in the east, they go to the west, and they're prostrating themselves before you. That means where's the Shechina? On the west. That's what Shubha Levi says. And we learn from the Beis HaMikdash. Maskul Rabba Yaakov Dilma, who said that the Shekhinah is in the west? Maybe, maybe when they're bowing down, they're not bowing to the west, they're traveling to the west, but they're actually bowing to the east. If, let's say, an Eved receives a portion from the Eved's master, he steps back and he's looking at his master. He doesn't turn his back to his master. He's looking at his master all the time and acknowledging and showing appreciation. He's walking backwards. And maybe that's what the sun and moon are doing. They're traveling to the west, but they're actually mishtachman to the east because their shchin is in Mizrach. Mishtachman, kasha. You're right. There's no proof one way or another. What do they do about the Beis Hamikdash? What do they do about the Beis Hamikdash? The Tosha says because maybe the Aron. So some of the Rishonim say that the Aron itself within the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even though the room itself was on the Ma'ariv, the Aron itself was a bit moved to the Mizrach side, closer to the Mizrach. It wasn't the epicenter like other Brisa say it was an epicenter. It was a bit more to the Mizrach. Therefore, we don't know which way to learn. Do we learn it from the room itself, which is Ma'ariv, or do we learn from the Aron, which is on the Mizrach part of that room? So you can't learn from the Beis Hamikdash one way or another. Okay, so far we have an opinion Shchiz Ma'ariv. The other opinion said maybe it's Mizrach. You have no proof for that. So the Gemara continues. Rabbi Eishia holds that Shechina b'chol makom. Rabbi Eishia disagrees. The Shechina is, where? Everywhere. Everywhere. Rabbi Eishia, it says the pasuk, Ata hu Hashem levadecha, that you are alone. Ata asisa sheshamayim, and that you created the heaven. And as we say in davening, shluchecha, that the Eibishter's emissaries, like shluchei basar dam, are not like a shliach of a human being. Shluchei basar dam, a shliach of a human being, v'makom shemishtalchim l'sham, that let's say you send someone to do a service for you. You're standing here in Balaclava Road and go somewhere else. They have to come back to report to you what happened. They go back to the original place and they tell you what happened. But your shluchim lemakom shemishtalchim, wherever you send them, misham machzidin shlichusam. That's where they report to you because you're everywhere. How do I know that? Shenema, because it says in pasuk, hashalach brakim. You send out these lightnings. The yelchu, they will go. The yom l'chon, they'll tell you, hineni, here we are. It doesn't say they will come back and tell you. Wherever they'll be, they'll say, here we are, because the shechin is everywhere. Yavoy v'yom, they're saying we'll come back. Elo v'yelchu v'yom, we'll go and we'll say, melamed shashchin b'chol makom, shechin is everywhere. So he says, sorry?
No. Sorry, I'll ask a question in a minute.
So Rabbi Shmuel Levi says shechin is b'mayriv, and Rabbi Oshia says that the shechin is b'chol makom makom. Sorry, what do you want to ask?
Isn't there a pasuk that says "B'chol makom asher azkir es shmi avoy ubeirachticha"? I mean, why wouldn't we use that pasuk? That shows he's everywhere.
It shows that so maybe the Abish is not there; he'll just come there, and he will and bench you. We want to prove that the Abish is there all the time; doesn't have to make an effort to come there. So therefore, we use took him here, and this is the gate halach, as we'll see in a minute. But after Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel also holds the Shekhinah is everywhere. The ton of Rabbi Shmuel learned. Minayin Shekhinah b'chol makom. Rabbi Shmuel learned how the Shekhinah is everywhere. Shenema, because it says in pasuk, the hine hamalach hadovid be the malach that spoke to me, Yotzei came from Hashem. Umalach acha Yotzei l'kraseh. When I got where I had to go, another malach came towards us. Now we were somewhere else, so it should have said. Another malach came afterwards, came behind him, coming from Hashem. It come from a different direction. He's talking about there that Yerushalayim, first the Abiyah told Zechariah that he should go ahead and measure Yerushalayim. And then the Abiyah changed it, like to punish it, to limit it. Then the Abiyah changed his mind. He sent another malach to say, no, we're not limiting Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. That Yerushalayim can expand as much as it wants. There are no borders. So the second malach came, wherever we were, came towards us from a different direction, and he was coming from the Eibishter. So that shows Hashem is everywhere. Melamed shechina b'chol makom, shechina is everywhere. But after Rav Sheshes savar shechina b'chol makom, shechina is everywhere. The Omalei Rav Sheshes l'shmai, Rav Sheshes once said this gabay l'choruska ukman. You can stand me up for Rav Sheshes was blind. We had in there an Avrit Sochin Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes were blind. So Rav Sheshes said to his gabay, you can stand me for Shmones in any direction, facing any direction. Levar Mizrach, except Mizrach. You can, in other words, the Shechin is everywhere. So why not Mizrach? The Lamashum the less Shechin, not because Hashem is not found in Mizrach. Because the students of Avodah Zarah feel that Hashem is due Mizrach and they dive in that direction. So therefore, I don't want to follow, mimic them. So put me any other direction. Now this is very interesting. And Rabbi Wu, I'll get to it in a second. Rabbi Wu says Shechin is admired in the west. Rabbi Wu said, "My Uriah." What does the word Uriah mean? Avir ka. The word Uriah, Rashi says in one explanation, which Taisa likes, Uriah in their language actually meant west. And he said the word Uriah is Avir ka. This is the space of Hashem, because Hashem is found in the west. Rashi actually brings a different shot that actually Uriah is the Mizrach in their language. And therefore, he says Hashem is in the west, and his space around him is the east. So Avir, the space around him, that's Uriah, that's east, and Hashem is found in the west. So in this Gemara here, we only bring two opinions. Either Hashem is in Ma'ariv or Hashem is B'chol Makom. We don't bring an opinion that Hashem is only in Mizrach, which is the Gemara we had in Brachas. In Brachas, we learn from the word Talpias that one should daven, one should daven to the east, because the Talpias, what Beis HaMikdash is a tell Kolpias that all the words come out of your mouth should go through there, filter through there to go to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So, and that's the Gemara there. The Gemara here doesn't bring that down. We'll see in a minute on the base, it brings one line of which direction. So there's a big machlekes, which way should you daven? You see, clearly, Rav Shesha said you can daven all directions because the Shekhinah is everywhere. And we have Rav Shubal Levi said you should daven towards Maidiv. So in halacha, we paskin like the Gemara in Brachas. We'll see later at the end of the Gemara finishes off with a different Amoira, so maybe that's why. And that is that we should daven towards the Beis HaMikdash, towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, we daven east. However, the Ramah says, you should not daven due east, because the Gemara just said right here, because of the Mishra Moide Bamini, so the Ramah Paskin in Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to daven due east. The Shul should always, or the Aron Kodesh should always be a little bit off east. So the Levush says, the Levush says that east is only if you're directly west from the Beis Hamikdash from Israel, you daven due east. But he says there, we in Europe, he was a student of the Ramah. He says, we in Europe who are actually northwest of Eretz Yisrael, so we should daven southeast. We should not daven east, not daven south. We should daven southeast towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards Eretz Yisrael. That's what he rules. The Beis Yosef doesn't bring that down. He says no, do east. But the Ramah doesn't quote his student the Levush. But the Ramah says, since you're not allowed to daven due east, make it a bit south. So which l'chayda, maybe that's where the Levush learned this idea from his teacher. Okay. In fact, it goes further than that. What happens if you started davening in the wrong direction, and then you realize you're not davening Mizrach? So there's a big machlek is brought down. The Beit Hater brings a big machlek is whether you should stop and turn yourself around, which is one view. But the Taz says if you did already, you can rely on these other opinions that says Shechina b'chol ruach, Shechina is everywhere. So based on that, Levush will come out that in Australia, that we are east of Eretz Yisrael, we're southeast of Eretz Yisrael, we should actually be davening northwest. That's really the direction we should be davening. And there's a machlekes, what happens if the shul has the aron the wrong direction, which way should everyone daven? So one opinion says that we should daven the direction of the aron. But the Alter Rebbe clearly says that if the aron is in the wrong direction, everyone should daven Mizrach. There's an argument if the aron is in the wrong direction and everyone's davening facing the aron, let's say the aron is south. It's the wrong direction. And everyone's davening to the aron, whether you should turn around and daven the right way or not. And one opinion says that no, you shouldn't, because you're in the shul and it's merziki yoyre, you look like you're bragging, but you can't be part of the community. Al tifresh min hatzibur. And the other opinion says no, you're davening the wrong way. Why should you have to follow everybody else that's doing the wrong thing? So it's an interesting argument. It's all found in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tzadik Dalet 94. Okay.
Truth of the matter is that every shul in Melbourne is davening in the wrong direction.
Why is that?
Because they've either got the Aron on north or west. and the direction of Yerushalayim is northwest-west. So the people who are davening north are davening towards the North Pole. People who are davening west are davening along the equator. So nobody's davening towards Yerushalayim.
1 second. We'll soon see in the Gemara that even though the Aron is in one place, you shouldn't be davening directly in that direction. You should be tilting your head a little bit. So you can fix it up very easy. If the shul is north, you face north. You do northwest. You face. We'll soon see. We'll see soon. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. Taking more further, I'm reviewing the Ma'adik Siv. It's supposed to Yariv Kamoto Lichi. That Lichi we say is a metaphor for Torah. My taking. So Yariv Kamoto Lichi, that it should pour down like rain. My Torah should come down to you like rain. So the way Rashi learns, we're comparing it to the 4 different winds, because there are winds in every direction, and we're comparing the Torah to different winds. Just like the world cannot exist without the 4 winds, so too the world cannot exist without Torah. So first it says Yaro Kamata Lichi Zu Ruach Maravi. That's referring to the western wind. Sheba Me'erpa Shalaylam. It comes from the back of the world. So Rashi says Erpa here, actually he heard it means the strength of the world. Why? Because it follows the opinion the Shechinah is a Ma'ariv. So therefore that's the strongest place. So Me'erpa Shalaylam means from the strength of the world. And Rashi then says, but he thinks the pshat should be, it says Achar v'kedem tzartani. Kedem is east, and Achar therefore the opposite side, which is west. And it says Achar, the behind, the back, and therefore it means that's why it's called Erpa Shalom. Okay, Tizal. Then the pasuk continues. Tizal katalim Rashi should flow, should run like dew. My words again, we're comparing the Torah to dew. Zurich, that's north. Why is the north called Tizal? Tizal also means cheapens. When the north wind blows, even though we said before it's important, it's vital, but the north wind what it also does is it scatters the clouds. But according to one opinion, it scatters the clouds and therefore allows the sun to come through, and it dries up all the crop, and then there's a famine. Or we're talking about a north wind when it comes very fierce. It cheapens the value of gold, because people are starving. Then gold is not worth much. They'll spend a lot more money just to buy a few parcels of food. It actually says a pasuk, Hazolim Zov Mikis, that it cheapens the gold from your wallet, and so on. So that's the north wind. Kisiidim alidesha drops on your grass, on your vegetables. Zu ruach mizrachi. That's referring to the easterly wind. Why? Shemisaeres is kololim. Sometimes it can turn around the whole world. These fierce tempestuous winds can turn around the whole world. Kisiir, like a demon, like a shed, like a demon. And even though before we said Mizrachi, Rashi said before, is a calm wind, but even every calm wind, when it gets very, very fierce, it can just be very destructive. So we're talking about easterly wind. We're describing each wind, and the Torah is compared to all the winds. So the Torah, is necessary for the existence of the world, just like all the winds are. And like droplets on your grass. That's the southern wind. It lifts the drops and it lets the grass grow. Suddenly the southern wind became good. The Bnei Gershom learns that so 2 of these things are good and 2 of these things are bad. Bnei Gershom learns the things that are good, Yarav Kamoto Lichi, which is good, is talking about if you learn Torah Lishma. And the things that are bad are talking about if you learn Torah not Lishma, that's what's going to happen. That's the punishment. So we're talking about all 4 winds, but we're talking about reward and punishment here. Tanya, we learned. Now the next part of the Gemara is something that I don't really understand. It has to do with astrology, as we learned in Psachim of Tzaddik in a few places in Shas, how the Gemara viewed the world. Tanya Rabbi Lezer says, Olam Laksadra Hu Daimah. The world is compared to a porch. If you remember, we had a big argument, Rashi and Tesis, if Aksadra means, Rashi generally learns Aksadra means no walls, and Tesis learns Aksadra means 3 walls, just minus the last one. And Tesis' proof is right here in the Gemara. The world is compared to Aksadra. Why? Because it has 3 sides covered, but the one side is open, exposed. The Ruach Tzfain is the northern side is not enclosed. But Rashi obviously is going to have to say that everything's in context. In this case here, obviously, Aksadra means 3 sides and one side is exposed. So now the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Lezer, this is how it works. The Kivin Shigiyah Chama Eitz Kedem Arav Tzfanis, when the sun travels the sun travels to the northern west corner, right? It goes from east, it rises east and it goes to the west, and it goes along the northern side. Nichfefes, what happens then when it gets nighttime? Where does the sun go? Nichfefes, it falls over. So there's like a cover. Rabbi Lezer looks like a cover in the world. It doesn't go around the world underneath. It goes above this cover of the world, and that's why we can't see, because there's a cover there, and it comes right back to where it came from. That's Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yeshua says, the world is like a box or a tent. And therefore he says, all four sides are enclosed. The northern wind also is enclosed. Everything is enclosed. The kiva shechama magas lekedem arav is when the sun reaches the northwestern corner. What happens to the sun? It makefes, even though the world's enclosed, it's sort of there's a hole there, a cavity there. It goes through the cavity and it goes back around underneath the world. In other words, the world is round and it goes around the world. The chayzeres achay the kippur. It comes back behind the kippur, behind the circle. It goes back around, right back where it came from. Shenema, it says, hoylech el darim. It goes to the south. V'seiviv el tzafar, and then goes to the north. And hoylech el. So when does it go to the south? B'yom, by day. V'seiviv el tzafar b'layla, and it goes to the north at night when we don't see it, but it goes around the other side of the world. Then it says seiviv. It goes around and around. So the wind goes back around, and shav haruach, the wind comes right back to where it started. Elu pnei mizrach upnei ma'ariv. Sometimes it goes around the pomelo, goes in a straight direction. So at night it goes all around the world, and during the day it goes in a straight direction to the west. Okay, so who haya'im? He would say, Asun Rabbi Lezer. This next part follows the view of Rabbi Lezer, who says that the world is similar to an Aksadra, open on the fourth side, and then at night the sun goes right back where it came from, above this cover of the world. Also, what that min hachede, it says min hachede tovei sufa. From the inner recesses comes this wind. Zu ruach dremis. We're talking about the southerly wind, because he holds that it was open in the front, which is tzafim. So the deepest part of this enclosure is south, the southernmost point. So that's why it's called tovei sufa. Comes from the end. Zu ruach dremis. That's talking about the southerly wind. Umimimzarim kara. And then when you scatter the clouds and everything else, kara becomes very cold. What's that referring to? Zu ruach tzvainis. That's the northern wind, because he said the northern side is sort of not really enclosed. It's open. And then the pasuk continues, Menishmas keil yitin kerech. And he says, when the Nishmas Hashem of Hashem, yitin kerech gives the cold ice. Zu ruach maravis. That is the westerly wind. And then the pasuk finishes off, V'reichav mayim b'mutzuk, that the water flows, zu ruach mizrachis. That's the easterly wind. So we're saying right now, who brings all the water? The easterly wind brings the water, the westerly wind brings the snow, and so on. Says the Gemara of Amar, didn't we just say that ruach dremis maler vivim umegadelas asavim? That's the southerly wind that makes it all happen. Like kasha, it's not a question. This is when the rain comes calmly, then it comes from the south. That's the plan. But the rain comes in a torrent, in an abundance amount of rain. That's from the east, because it says mayim b'mutzak. That's like in the torrent. It says in pasuk, mitzafin zav yasser, from the north gold comes. Zu ruach tzfainis. That is the northerly wind. Why? As we said before, shemazeles es hazav. The northerly wind scatters the clouds, becomes very hot. It basically destroys the crop. There's a famine, and now gold is not worth much, because people will spend as much gold as they have just to buy some food. We said before, it says in pasuk, hazol im zav mikis. It cheapens the gold from your pocket. Omar Afram Papa, Omar Chizda. Miyoim shecharav beis hamikdash, from the day the beis hamikdash was destroyed, lo hukshma ruach dremis. That why they didn't rain from the ruach dremis. They used to bring a lot of rain. We said before, the southerly wind, and good rain, and after the beis hamikdash was destroyed, there wasn't much rain. Shenema, we're talking about Yisrael. Shenema, it says in the pasuk, vayigzer al yamin, he was geyser on the right side. The Rav, and there was a hunger, the Yeichel, And they didn't get full, and they were eating. Talking about it was a famine, it was a hunger, and they were stealing from each other, and they were eating the flesh of their own children. So, in other words, it didn't. There was a famine after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. It will be. He was talking about Shai. He was talking about the future. The famine after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. Uksiv, and it says, "Tzafin v'yamin ata barasam." You created north and right, and you create north and right. And so, therefore, we're saying over here is that after Churban Beis Hamikdash, these winds that were supposed to bring all this rain didn't really happen. We know that Yisrael was basically a desert all the years until the last 2 centuries. In the 1880s, when they came in, and Eden once came back and started to rebuild. Otherwise, it's just a desolate place. Amar Rav Papa, Amar Rav Chizda. The Yom Shechar Beis Hamikdash, from the time of the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, Einak Shamim Yardin Ma'itza Tov. The rain does not come from the good treasure house. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk that Yiftach Hashem l'chazatzari atayv. He will open up this wonderful oitzer when Bisman sheYisro, and he'll give you all these rains, and he'll bench you only while the Eden are behaving. Bisman sheYisro oisin tzayim shemaka, when the Eden are doing what Hashem wants. And Yisro shul masim, the Eden live in Israel, reside in Israel. Shamim Yodim ma'itza tayv. But that's when the rain will come from a good place. When the Eden are not residing in Israel, they no longer come from the good place. And that's what we're talking about Yisrael. And that's why there's such poverty and everything else in Yisrael. Previously, when the Chassidim came and the literature came, in the times of Al Treb and the Vilna, they found it extremely difficult to do anything. It was just one big desert. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, interesting Gemara. If you want to become wise, Yadrim, you should face south. Why south? When you walk into the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash is on the western side. When you walk into the Beis on the western side, the right side was north, the left side was south, Durham. The right side was Tzafon. The Shulchan was on the right side, was in Tzafon, and the Menorah was on the left side. The Shulchan, as Gemara says, represents Parnasa, so that's wealth. And the menorah, light, represents wisdom. So if you want wisdom, you go to the left. You face the left. No, you face south. And if you want wealth, you daven facing north. Big machlek is Rashi, and interesting, the Ramon Shulchan Aruch. Rashi says it means you still daven mizrach. It's talking about your face. Where should your face be? So even though the orism is a mizrach and you're facing mizrach, but your face should either be to the north or to the south. For facing mizrach, then to the right would be wisdom, and to the left would be wealth. The left would be Yidorim, and the right would be Tzafim. All the way around. Sorry. If you're facing mizrach, the right would be Dorim, and the left would be Tzafim. The Ramah Shulchan Aruch says that you should daven in that direction, but turn your face to Mizrach. It's your body that is facing the Durham or the Tzafon, and he said, but make sure you tilt your face towards Mizrach. Interesting argument between Rashi and the Ramah. I'm not sure exactly. You would think it's all about the head, where you're thinking. When where you're concentrating, you're davening, so you want Ashiras, you're davening, you want Chachma. So it's really which direction your head is. I mean, like Rashi learns. Why the Ramah changes and says, no, that your body should be facing that direction and your head should be towards Mizrach, unless, because we had in the Gemara as well, that if you don't know which direction, Gemara Brachas, you don't know which direction, just have in mind, kivim b'libay, that you're davening to Beis Hamikdash. So maybe the most important part about davening in direction is where your head is, not so much where your body is. Maybe, but he says further. Remember that Shulchan B'Tzafon, the Shulchan Parnas is north. U'Menorah B'Darim. Rabbi Shmuel Levi argues, La'olam Yadrim. You should always daven to the south. Why? Which makes you smart. If you're smart, you'll figure out how to make a parnasa. So you don't need like Rosh Melech. Chose Chachma, same thing. Shenemar, it says, See, one Torah, which is knowledge, gives you everything. Interesting, why doesn't make it also from Shlomo HaMelech that he chose intelligence? what's interesting is the Shulchan Aruch paskins not like Rabbi Shmuel Levi, but Rabbi Yitzchak. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. And the question is, because it says in the Gemara a few places, whenever Rabbi Shmuel Levi argues, we always pass Rabbi Shmuel Levi, and here we don't. And the Ramah, by the way, the Bes Yosef doesn't bring this down from the Ramah, and so means Bes Yosef doesn't pass, and this is not even halacha according to Bes Yosef. And why would the Ramah paskin like the Tanakhama? So I was thinking maybe it's not the Tanakhama, Rabbi Yitzchak, because I'm sure what Levi said makes sense. If you become smart, you'll figure out how to make good panos. But maybe there's a pasuk that says loy lechachamim lechem. That generally speaking, chachamim, no matter how smart they generally are not so affluent. So maybe that's why Shulchan Aruch says that if you're going to daven for chachma, doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be successful in panos or in ashiris. Anyway, says the Gemara. But I don't understand. But Rabbi Shmuel Levi Amar Shechin b'Ma'ariv. How can Rabbi Shmuel Levi say you should daven in a certain direction? Didn't he say Shechin is b'Ma'ariv? So you have to face Ma'ariv. The Mitzad Avzdudei, he's facing Ma'ariv, but his head turns in different directions. All Rabbi Chanina Ravashi. Rabbi Chanina said to Ravashi. Now, it's impossible for Chanina to talk to Ravashi because Chanina was the first generation of Amoraim, and Ravashi closed the Gemara. So therefore, others want to say it's not Ravashi. They want to say it's on the side it's Rabbi Yeshua. So others say it's Rabbi Asi. Going atun the Yasvita betzvaynet, so you who live in the north side of Eretz Adrimu, you should daven south. Adrimu, you should daven south. So what do we think? So this opinion is neither of the two, because if you daven b'chol tzad, daven any direction you want, or Ma'ariv, daven Ma'ariv, what does Eretz Yisrael? The fact that it has to do with Eretz Yisrael means this is the Gemara Brachas, that we should face the Beis Hamikdash, face Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I remember reading when I was at Yisrael that when they uncovered archaeological finds and they found shuls, they found quite a few shuls where the Aron Kodesh was not facing Yerushalayim, which means that many people then paskin like these other opinions that you can daven in any direction you want, or maybe daven Ma'ariv side, not to Yerushalayim. Anyway, said the Gemara, how do you know? The Bavel that's fine at Yisrael, how do you know that Bavel is on the north side of Yisrael? We know that Bavel, Iraq, is basically east of Yisrael. So, and that's obvious. They traveled all the time. They knew that. But you tell me it's also considered north. So how do you know it's north? Maybe since it's primarily east, a little bit north, it's really more, we should talk about it as being in east rather than north. Because the pasuk says mitzafan tiftach hara kol yeshuaris, and there comes the evil. So the fact that the pasuk is the chiddush is that even though it's east, it's also considered north. It's also considered north, and it says in Sfarim, I can't remember where, based on the Klei Yakar and Chumash Devarim, that if you want wealth, you should daven safan. The word safan also means to be discreet. If you want to be wealthy and daven, make sure that you daven that your wealth should not be ostentatious, and you should not in any way provoke others to be envious of you, and that they should give you an ayin hara. So if you want to be wealthy, suffer. In the word, like we say by the Seder, that you should hide, be discreet. And the Klei Yakar writes in Chumash Devarim, by Shishi, where it says so he says there that the source of all anti-Semitism is that Yidden who are successful don't know how to keep it discreet. They have to show off, and it basically provokes the goyim, and that's what he says is the cause of anti-Semitism. Anyway, the Gemara continues. Back to the Mishnah. You have to distance the flax from the vegetable. Rabbi Yossi permits mustard. He can tell him, you want me to move my mustard from your bees? You should distance your bees. They're coming and eating the leaves of their mazik as much as I am. Why should I move? Next Mishnah, again talking about neighbors distancing themselves. You should distance a tree from a pit 25 amas because eventually the roots will grow and will damage the pit. If you talk about a boxer carob tree or sycamore tree, is 50 amas. Should actually distance more than that, 50 amas, because their roots grow a lot further. Even though it might take years and years, but eventually. Doesn't matter whether the tree is above in a higher ground or the bar is a higher ground. whether they're on the same level. Then he says, Im ha-boir kadma, if the guy, the neighbor, built the boir before you decided to plant a tree, according to Chachamim, then you're a mazik, and you had no right to. Kaitzitz will chop the tree down, the noise and dumb. But we tell the guy from the boir, you have to compensate him, because since when he built the boir, he had a right to build it. He didn't have a right. He didn't do anything wrong at the time, because he didn't cause any damage. It takes years before the roots will travel that distance to come to you, and therefore you should compensate that person. But the Elam kodim, but if the tree was first, then the bar shouldn't have, the owner of the bar should not have placed his bar there. Then layakin, so you have no right to cut that person's tree down. What about Suffolk? We had this in a few days ago. Suffolk, Zek, we're not sure which is first. Layakin, don't cut it down at all. You don't cut it down at all in that case. Rabbi Yosi disagrees. This is where we learned Rabbi Yosi. Afa pisha bar kedemis lil. Even if the bar was the first. So the owner of the tree is the mazik, because eventually his roots will affect the bur, the walls of the bur. La yakud, you have no right to cut down the tree. Why not? The person who dug the bur, you dug it in your own property. The person who planted the tree in his own property, and I'm not causing any damage at the moment. Says the Gemara, I don't care what's higher up, whether the bird is below and the tree is above. So the chayda, you can say the roots of the tree will eventually work its way down and destroy the bird. But even more so, the tree is below. If the tree is below, the roots of the tree will never hit the bird. Yet you have to have that distance. So the Gemara, I understand if the bird is below, I understand if the tree is above. The tree roots will come and destroy the bird. But if the bird is above and the tree is below, what's the problem? You know why? It sort of weakens the underneath, beneath the bird, it weakens the dirt, and basically it destroys the base of this bird. Rabbi Yosi says, we had this a number of times, and this is where he said it. When the Yeshua of Kahana have a meaning, he would say the following. Rabbi Yosi is made if it's your arrows. And he had a big machlekes which we discussed at length a few days ago. But basically, Rashi learns Begida Day means if it came directly from me, I did it. And if it came directly from me, then I am responsible. Like the case what we had in the end of Bava Metzia, where the floor of the upstairs sort of gave way, and every time the guy upstairs pours water, washes negavas, or whatever it is, the water goes straight down. That's called Gida de Day. It's coming straight from you. Then the guy upstairs, even Rabbi Yoshi's Maida, has to fix the floor. But if it came indirect, like the tree, the roots of the tree, it's not coming from me, it's coming from the tree. Then I am potter. Traces learns the difference between Gida de Day. Gida de means if it happens straight away, or if it takes time. Like the case of the Martin there, even though you didn't do it, the Martin did it, but since as soon as you place the ladder by the dovecot, the Martin might jump, from the tree right onto the ladder, and it's happening straight away, then it's considered Gida de Day. The Gemara continues. Papi Yonah, Papi was from Greece. Oni the Herrscher. He was poor, and then he became rich. And he went ahead and he built himself a beautiful palace. And there were the people who had a press, but not an olive press. It was a sesame seed press to bake sesame oil. And you have a daike shumshme. Every time that they would press the sesame, having naida after his whole house began to vibrate. Now the relevance that he was poor and became rich. The chiddush here is that while he was poor, that guy built himself a sesame plant. No one ever anticipated that this guy would ever build himself a palace. He was a poor guy. So therefore, he had the right, and there was no reason to worry that one day. And then suddenly his circumstances changed. He became a rich man. He built himself a palace. And you had many years of chazakah, but he's saying, I don't care. I now have a house here, and I can't continue to live like this while you're doing producing your oil. Says the Gemara. Also, Kamarabashi. Omele, he said, meaning he told us, Rabbi Yosi is Maida when it's directly from you or straight away. Over here, every time that they banged the top, I guess, to press down on the sesame, the guy's house shook. So the Gemara Vikama, what's considered a house that is vibrating or shaking? What's considered shaking? Now this is interesting. Rashi and Tesa have an argument here on a fact. And Rashi says it's talking about if you place the barrel on top of the wall of the house, the lid, when it shakes, when the wall shakes there, and the lid, the nichtama, which is the lid on the head, on the top of the barrel, if that shakes. In other words, according to Rashi, you place a barrel on the wall, and there's a lid on top of the barrel. If that lid shakes, that means the house is shaking too much. So what are you talking about? To make that happen, the house has to practically move back and forth. It never happens that the house should move to that extent. Never. So Taisa therefore says, talking about the barrel itself standing there next to the sesame, not on the wall of a house. If it trembles at the lid, moves a little bit, which is even slightly ajar, is enough to say stop. And then Taisa brings another opinion who agrees with Rashi. He says, what are you talking about? It's a fact. You put a barrel on top of a wall, the lid moves readily, straight away. So they're arguing in the Metzias. There's a lid of a barrel on top of a wall, and the house shakes a little bit. Does the lid move or not? Then the Gemara continues. Let's just go to the Mishnah. The son of Rabin, Kisna. It's a similar story. So the son of Rabin, Kisna, when he was banging over there the flax, so you have to break down the flax and the fibers in order to turn into linen. Having Ozla Raksa, so the chaff went flying. Umaske Inchin is literally hurting people. But he was doing this for a while. He sort of had a chazaka. Also, the Kamei de Ravina came to Ravina, Amalu, and Ravina said, so the it's going directly from this person who's banging on these things, so we should tell him to stop, even according to Rabbi Yossi. So Ravina said, He amrinan moide Rabbi Yossi begida delay. When do we say Rabbi Yossi says if it's your arrows, that it's your energy that's doing it? That is coming there only 100% from you. It's not you who's transporting this chaff to the next door neighbor or to these people there. It's the wind. And therefore, that's not called Gita delay. Because it shouldn't. But according to Rabbi Yossi, it's not Gita delay. They should move away. They shouldn't be walking around there. Maskila Mar Baravashi. So Mar, the son of Ravashi said, I don't understand. Maishna, how is this different? We had this in Hakenis and Samach there. How is it different than Zoide the Ruach Mesayate on Shabbos? If you do winnowing, you need the wind to come along and to break the chaff. And that's the malacha, one of the 39 malachas. Even though the wind is supporting it and making it happen, doesn't matter. It's considered as if you did the malacha and you're chayiv. No, so why should here be any different? What do you mean delay? It is. So he says, Zoide the Ruach Mesayate. It should be the exact same thing. There is considered malacha, same thing over here. It should be as if you directly are affecting these people. Amrua kamei de merema. They said this before merema. Amalu. I agree. You're right. And I think that this is a case of Gita today, and he has to stop. He has to stop banging the flax over there. Well, Ravina, according to Ravina, who disagrees, Ravina says don't compare Shabbos to Nezikin, because everyone agrees as far as payment is concerned, by Nezikin you don't have to pay because it's called Grumma. Everyone agrees as far as payment is, he's potter because Grumma, cause of Nezikin is potter. But you want to say it's still also like Shabbos. And I disagree. I hold that since you don't have to pay, there's no Isser. And the other opinion, and the other ones say it's the same thing, meaning not that you have to pay, but it's Usser, just like Shabbos is Usser. So the question is, the Isser of the Zikin, is that a corollary of a monetary payment? So therefore, it's not really an Isser like an Avera. It's more to do with, it's an extension of payment. So if you don't have to pay, then there's no Isser. Or do we say that the Isser is totally independent from payment? That's a commercial law, and this is a law of Isurim. And that's the argument. How do we understand the Isser of the Zikin? What it is exactly. I told you last time the Machlekes were showing him what exactly the Isser is. Is it Lifnei Iver? Is it Avafter Chmoicha? Is it Rocher Dachinoyim? Or so on. Uliksama Dam Reyecha. Ravina, according to Ravina. Okay, Ravina, you hold that this is a case that's not usher because the wind is doing it. So Maishna, why is it any different negates from a spark? Somebody's banging with a hammer and a spark escapes. The hizik and causes damage. The chayiv l'sham have to pay. Over there also is the wind that transported the spark, and over there we make you pay. Says Gemara. So Ravina answers back. It's fundamentally different. There you are very happy for the spark to escape. You don't want the spark to stay here and catch you on fire under your property there. You want to go away as far as possible. So because it's not just the wind, that's your intention. That's exactly what you want. So therefore, it's considered as if you did the whole malacha. You think you want the chaff to go and fall on other people? Not at all. You don't really care. So therefore, since he had no real intention for the land there, and it's the wind that's doing it, not you, therefore, he says it's not us, so you can continue doing the work. It's not called Gila today. Okay, good luck, everyone.